From scary dolls to assorted crucifixes and various other paraphernalia, the Warren Museum has a variety of items in their collection. My own personal interest in all things ooky and spooky started when I was researching the animal doll way back in high school, back when it was a Raggedy Ann doll that not as many knew about. Now, while she doesn't make today's list, let me know in the comments if you folks out there would ever be interested in me talking about my personal creepy doll collection. For now, sit back and enjoy the top 5 demonic idols found in the Warren Occult Museum. In 5th place, we're starting with a lesser known artifact from the Warrens' home. What appears to the innocent eye as nothing but a long black spike, perhaps left over from a construction project of sorts, holds a history of sadness and evil doing. Being the oldest item listed today, its history dates back to its use in the 1700s. While the name of the witch it belonged to has been lost to time, the spike was originally used in a black mass ritual, in an attempt to summon Satan himself to this world. The witch we're speaking of had attempted to curse the stake over the course of her pregnancy, hoping that it would become strong enough to take the soul of her womb in exchange for the devil. During the ritual, she plunged the stake into the flesh as sacrifice, but while it strengthened her relationship with Satan, it did not succeed in bringing him to earth. The stake was passed down as a family heirloom, bringing a feeling of longing and sadness to any that held it, until it was finally acquired by the Warrens. Moving along to 4th place, we're discussing the only item on this list that's made its way to Hollywood: Beth Sheba's jewelry box. In January 1971, the Perron family moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, where Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters began to notice strange occurrences almost immediately. It started with events that most of us probably wouldn't even register. Carolyn would notice that the broom went missing or seemed to move from place to place on its own. See, I'd personally be chalking that up to my ADHD. 2 young girls of the home began to notice spirits around the house. Carolyn then brought it upon herself to research the history of the home and discovered that it had been in the same family for 8 generations, and that many of them had passed under mysterious or horrible circumstances. The most haunting spirit in the home is that of the witch, Beth Sheba Sherman. Fairly well off, Beth Sheba and her husband Judson had a son, Herbert L. Sherman, born when Bathsheba was approximately 37 years old. While the couple gave birth to 3 others, they weren't able to survive past the age of 7. One of the passings of a neighbor's child in her care drew public attention during a post-mortem examination, when it was determined that the fatal wound was caused by a large sewing needle that had been impaled at the base of the skull. It's believed that Bathsheba took offense to Carolyn moving into what she considered her home and wanted to take back that control. The most notable incident being one afternoon when Carolyn said that she had been lying on the sofa and out of nowhere felt a piercing tip of pain in her calf, and then the muscle began to spasm. Upon examination, she noticed a puddle of blood at the point of impact. She checked for bees or anything else that could have caused the puncture in her leg, but found nothing. In her daughter's book, Andrea Perron described the wound as perfectly circle, as if a large sewing needle had impaled her skin. Now, if I were to summarize the entire hell the Perron family endured for the decade that they lived in what they refer to as the Old Arnold Estate, we'd be here for an hour. But during one of the last instances where the Warrens were called in to help the ailing family, they removed the box from the home after thoroughly blessing it, believing that it was acting as a conduit for Bathsheba's demonic energy to affect the home.
Number 3, the Leviathan. Okay, at first I was like, oh, that's a roller coaster at Canada's Wonderland. No, this vicious monster was actually modeled after this vicious monster. The Leviathan, the second of the great monsters described in the book of Job. This Leviathan, is an absolute massive sea monster who's impervious to human weapons, breathes fire, and emits smoke from his nostrils. So this is a Zelda boss for sure. The Leviathan is probably related to another ancient monster called Lotan, a 7-headed giant serpent who represents primeval chaos, as with pretty much every other biblical creature does. Hey, these things aren't meant to be cute and fuzzy. There's some less exciting theories that insist the Leviathan is just a dramatic interpretation of a crocodile or anaconda or maybe a plesiosaur, resembling something like the Loch Ness Monster. But that doesn't explain the breathing fire thing, or the size. Was this giant sea snake a water dragon? Because apparently it's like 300 miles long. Yeah, terrifying. Scary thing now is many different religions and cultures have their own version of the Leviathan. Tiamat, Hydra, Jormungandr. Maybe this thing was just hunted into extinction. I don't know. What do you think? Number 2, Archangel Michael. It is said that the angels are not humans, but creatures made from God's creation. I've also seen what the Bible describes angels looking like, and it's not handsome people with wings. Apparently, a lot of these things, people really couldn't even describe what they were seeing in front of them. But we'll get to what these things look like in a minute. Of those creatures, Satan, aka Lucifer, is one. The one. However, here is even one creature that Satan fears more than any creature, and that's fellow Archangel Michael. Or Saint Michael. Some say they're brothers, some say they were on the same team for a bit. This is some good stuff, people. Quote, "Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Revelation 12:7-9. Okay, so hold on. He and them are all down here with us? That's terrifying. Apparently Michael led that army that won, so whatever scares Satan scares the hell out of me as well. Also, all these pictures and statues of him and like window panes are all of him like wielding a giant sword made of light, just stepping on Satan's back as a hero. That's pretty intimidating, not gonna lie. And coming in at the number 1 spot, Ophanim. Okay, so what angels actually looked like apparently was like giant geometrical feathers with eyes and a consciousness. Some had horns, some had hooves, lots of gold and metal colors. This next thing doesn't even make sense to my brain. I feel like this is an anthill trying to understand an iPhone. Quote, as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparked like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel, intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creatures were faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all 4 rims were full of eyes all around. Ezekiel 1:15-18. First off, is this thing even a creature? Yeah, everything I see here is an alien. Is this just us trying to process some sort of like energy being with eyes? Because if I saw Lucifer that looks like the hunk on the Netflix show, and then I saw this thing? One of the Dead Sea Scrolls interprets them as angels. Late sections of the Book of Enoch interprets them as class of celestial beings who don't sleep and guard the throne of God. Whatever this thing or things are, it sounds and looks absolutely horrifying. How could you paint that on a ceiling? I would just give up and paint wings and a halo as well. For real though, like that is a spaceship of some sort, isn't it? I mean, I understand the times, maybe the science wasn't there, but this thing is straight out of a sci-fi novel.
In at 5, Aquel. Now, there is very little known about Aquel, but what we know is that he is the demon who presides over Sundays and exists within Christian mythology. His purpose is to destroy and degrade the practice of keeping the Sabbath holy, which might not sound absolutely terrible, but if this dude possesses the wrong person, it could be bad news bears for all of us. Imagine the president, a prime minister, even one senator possessed, and suddenly we have to work 7 days a week without a single day off. Yeah. Okay, it's a stretch, but there's a reason he is at our number 5. Honestly, no one wants to work long weekends. Just saying. Also, apologies in advance if I pronounce all these names wrong. I'm not a demon. Shh. In at 4, Sergat. Now, Sergat is a minor demon referenced in the grimoire of Pope Honorius, but this does not diminish the fact that he is straight up evil. He is listed as, I quote, Sergat who opens all locks, and his opposite is actually our previous number, Aquel. So before we even get into this demon, we should discuss how many demons are actually mentioned in the Great Grimoire of Honorius. Who was he? Historians aren't even sure, but they do think that he was Honorius III, who was the Pope from 1216 to 1227. Now, no one is quite sure if he wrote the book or not, but he is famous among popes for deliberately conducting ceremonies to summon demons so he could banish the demons back down to hell. A little odd. This dude does not mess around. Now, how does Sergat come into play? Well, as previously mentioned, he makes appearances in the Grimoire of Honorius, and he is incredibly deceptive and cunning, making him one of the most terrifying demons throughout history. And in the Bible. Yeah, he's there too. Now, as quoted before, this dude is known as the one who opens all locks, which essentially means he is capable of understanding and opening any and all locks in the entire world, making it almost impossible to escape him or conceal yourself from him. When someone becomes Sergat's target, he relentlessly pursues them no matter how hard they try to escape, and once he reaches his victims, he frightens them by presenting them with images that result in them going mad. Yikes, don't summon this bad boy.
Coming in number 3, we've got the false prophet. Whether this is actually an angel or not is a point of contention, but I believe that this presence is employed by the heavens regardless, so we'll allow it. This beastly brute will arrive just in time to sway the hearts of weaker humans, and then condemn them for falling to his trickery. During the divine trumpet solo, a horrifying beast will emerge from the sea, killing many. However, the beast will be injured after this. Once that is complete, the false prophet will rise. This entity will force anyone around to worship the first beast, causing them to be branded with the mark of the beast, or 666. Any who comply will be damned, of course, and will also suffer immensely once the plagues from the bulls rain down. But really, did any mortal have a choice in the matter? The beast from the sea is powerful enough to frighten anyone into submission, so what else are they supposed to do? During a reign of hellfire like that, there's not too much in terms of rational thinking or hope. I suppose it's a test to see if those who are truly devoted to God are ready to simply die with the knowledge that they'll be saved. But still, that is a hardcore trust test. Coming in number 2, we've got the Babylon. Another questionably angelic figure, but one who appears nonetheless. As chaos reigns around the world, the Whore of Babylon will descend upon humanity riding a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. She will be drunk on the blood of martyrs and saints and looking for a good time. And by good time, I do mean blood. This is interesting, as this particular figure seems to be representative of a political movement at the time. Scholars often accept her as a symbol for Rome, with 7 heads representing the 7 hills of Rome and the 10 horns standing in for the 10 emperors who seem to be pushing for a less Christian world. So even if this promiscuous beast rider wasn't an angel from heaven herself, she represented something that God would have abhorred. And in being a symbol to rally against and hate, this Babylonian beauty probably steered folks back in the direction those at the church appreciated. Interesting, right? And finally, at number 1, we've got Abaddon, God's chosen angel of death, the supposed location of the lake of fire, and a legendary name overall. This figure is said to have released the locusts mentioned earlier. A swarm of locusts probably isn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. They can block out the sun and eat all your crops, but that is a minor setback. However, Abaddon's locusts, that's a whole other story. These hellish insects are ready to go to war. They're said to appear as war horses with human heads and thorny crowns. With long flowing hair and teeth as sharp and strong as a lion's, they're instructed to torture anyone without the sign of God on their forehead for 5 long months. It seems a little excessive, but here we are. This is an angel who's all about cleansing the world of impure people through death, and the fact that he also commands these hordes of nightmare bugs only serves to intensify his wicked reputation. If there's an angel better known for cruelty and unforgivingness, let me know. But for now, we'll let Abaddon top the list.
Number 5, Nephilim. This one I can get behind for sure. How the pyramids were built still baffles me, and reading all about these things at least makes my brain relax for a second. The giants, the talls, the long neck people, the Nephilim. Again, never been a Bible guy myself, so no judgment if you say all this happened, but I'm just catching up on all this stuff. But in short, the Nephilim were like the offspring of angels and human women, according to Genesis 6:1-4 and Jude. The Nephilim are also mentioned in Numbers 13:33, but it is likely that by this time in Israel's history, Nephilim was used as a term for a tall, intimidating peoples. It's plausible that the Nephilim were both half angels and half giants, making them absolutely huge and absolutely super strong. The Nephilim were the children of the sons of gods and daughters of men, and Christian scholars have theorized that the sons of gods were actually these demonic fallen angels who reproduced with women. Being the offspring of partial angelic heredity, the Nephilim were considered mighty men who are of old the men of renown. The ancients. These people were huge, claiming that they were like 5 times the size of an average man. In the Hebrew Bible, a group of mysterious beings or people of unusually large size and length who lived both before and after the flood were called Nephilimus, sometimes translated to giants. Even the fallen ones, from the Hebrew Nephil, meaning to fall. Seems like these people were writing about similar stuff, huh? Spooky. Number 4, 200 million horsemen. This next one is not really a creature as much as it's the end of a lot of all of us. All this Armageddon stuff they were saying, that's some pretty strange stuff that's on its way. Book of Revelation stuff, you know? Quote, I saw as God wanted to show me the horses and the men on them. The men had pieces of iron on their chests. These were red like fire and blue like the sky and yellow like sulfur. The heads of the horses looked like the heads of lions. Fire and smoke and sulfur came out of their mouths. 1/3 part of all man was killed by the fire and smoke and sulfur that came out of their mouths. Word for word. Horsemen or ancient biblical technology? This sounds horrifying. Also, 200 million? That's a lot of flying flaming horses just trucking around the skies and sands like giant tanks, firing fire out of their mouths and nose. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming metal. And from the midst of all this came likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human likeness. Okay. You put a Baja hoodie on me at a Dave Matthews concert and hear me saying all that stuff, you probably just think I'm some sci-fi stoner. Nope. This is riveting material, folks. I need to read this thing front to back. Apparently this force was supposed to have taken out, or is going to take out, 1/3 of the entire world's population. I know like 3 things that can do that. pandemics, missiles, and floods. However, if men and horses showed up with lion heads breathing fire, it's safe to say it's game over.
In at 3, Agarus. Agarus is a demon described in demonological grimoires as a duke, under the power of the East, an old man riding upon a crocodile and carrying a hawk on his fist. Agarus is known to teach languages, however he also stops and retrieves runaways, causes earthquakes, and grants noble titles. Now I shouldn't technically be saying he, because Agarus can be a man or a woman. If the demon is a man, the man is old and riding said crocodile. If the demon is a woman, she is young and angelically beautiful. Now it's surprising how many demons are teachers. They instruct those they visit or possess, and grant knowledge and power, so I guess it's not all bad. The exorcists seem to miss out that little nugget of information. Now, although this demon is downright evil, he or she will grant you the knowledge of every language in the world. However, the bad news, he or she will only teach you the foulest and most offensive words, so say bye bye to your friends, I guess. Yeah, you'll be educated, but you will be vile beyond belief. So, you'll be me. In at 2, Renov. In demonology, Renov is described as a Marquis and the Great Earl of Hell, hence why he is number 2 on our list. This dude commands 20 legions of demons, making him one of the most notorious demons throughout history, one that you certainly don't want to be messing around with. Now, what makes him quite the enigma is that yes, he's awful, the worst, but he's also somewhat of a scholar. He teaches art, rhetoric languages, and gives loyal servants the favor of friends and foes. Now, you may be familiar with this demon, as he is the one who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is horrible enough, but what makes this demon truly terrible is that he is the taker of old souls. Basically, this means anyone who is older looking, or looks a little under the weather, Renov will claim them. Also, pets are not immune to this. He will kill them too. Your best option is just to steer clear of all your elderly relatives, and consider getting a new, younger looking pet. Just saying, they gotta go. And finally, coming in at number 1, Baphomet. This name may ring a bell for you, and that's because Baphomet is a deity that the Knights Templar were falsely accused of worshipping, following which time it was subsequently incorporated into occult and mystical traditions throughout history. It first appeared in trial transcripts for the Inquisition of the Knights Templar beginning in 1307, which resulted in it being popularized in the English language in the 19th century during debate and speculation on the reasons for the suppression of the Templars. The appearance of Baphomet is that of a goat, an image drawn by Eliphas Levi, which contains binary elements representing the sum total of the universe. More interesting still, this picture of Baphomet is often used as a stand-in for Satan by Satanists and Christians alike. Now, it is a highly debated topic about whether this demon was truly good or bad, but if we look to historical accounts, Baphomet comes from a letter written by a French crusader in 1098. He describes the crusaders' enemies in the Holy Land, I quote, calling upon Baphomet prior to battle. Baphomet refers to Muhammad, the prophet. European Christian dogma viewed the worship of Muhammad as idolatry, which was harnessed by a medieval European ruler in the form of a witch hunt targeting his political opponents.
Coming in number 5, we've got Trumpeting Angels. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a good trumpet solo. It's a beautiful instrument with so much room for expression and range. However, these angels aren't likely looking to play some blues scales, nor are they going to run through a sorrowful ballad. They're playing these trumpets as a way to kick off the horrifying festivities of the end of the world. The 7 trumpets shall be played by 7 angels, each of which marks the beginning of something terrible. This all happens after humanity has already been reduced to tatters and folks are living in caves, so hot start. But it does get hotter, because the trumpets are supposed to raise hell. Let's run through all 7 and see how we feel. The first trumpet rings out loud and clear, summoning a storm of hellfire. Hail, fire, and boiling blood will rain from the skies upon those still present on earth. This is so spicy hot that all the grass and trees still standing will be burned down to nothing. Anyone outside of their cave dwelling will be cooked too. Now, you might be thinking that the sea is a good, safe place during all of this, but not so, as the second trumpet begins the process of breaking down a burning mountain and sending all the pieces into water, reducing the wildlife to blood and destroying any human-made vessels. Trumpet number 3 fells a star named Wormwood, sending it careening down to Earth. When it touches down, it poisons a portion of all the waters on Earth, whether they be rivers, lakes, oceans, or streams. There are stark few comforts left at this point, but things can get worse. All of the light from the sun and stars disappears at the sound of the 4th trumpet, which can't be very well received by the folks still surviving. After darkness reigns, an eagle will swoop down and warn folks of the next trumpets and their consequences. Number 5 brings about another fallen star, this one carrying a plague of locusts that are meant to torment any non-believers. Now here's where things get really dire. Trumpet 6 unleashes 4 very special, very violent angels. This fearsome foursome will send 200 million horsemen down to Earth to cut through a third of humanity using fire, smoke, and sulfur. Holy smoke, they're not messing around. Worse yet, their horses barely resemble anything equine. They're chimeric abominations with heads of lions, snake-like tails, and horrible breath. Lastly, number 7 kicks off a brand new set of tortures for those who remain on Earth, led by another set of awful angels. Let's talk about that in the next entry. Coming in number 4, we have the 7 bowls. The trumpets were just a warning, a sign of things to come. And while the angels who played these deadly instruments are bad, the angels in charge of these heavenly bowls are so much worse. Plus, they look like they're bringing down holy offerings, which gives folks false hope before realizing what's actually going on. So 7 angels take up 7 bowls or vials or whatever vessel you can imagine and bring the contents down to Earth. They then begin pouring whatever's inside down upon the ground, and then things go really sour. Inside these bowls resides pain and torture, plague and disease. Anyone who made it through the trumpeting will then be annihilated without remorse. Folks develop oozing sores, rivers are filled with blood, people literally combust on the spot. It's all very wild. And the fun doesn't stop there either. As plagues spread through the world and those who have sinned suffer lifetimes of pain, even more madness is poured by these bowl-bringing angels. After the Euphrates River dries up, battles between kings of the world will begin and more lives will be lost. And to top everything off, the bowls bring about the most powerful and destructive earthquake that mankind will ever see. No disaster to date will compare to the chaos whipped up by this massive quake, leveling entire cities in seconds, opening up enormous chasms in the earth, and generally making it really hard to have a good time. Damn. So what at first appears to be a reward for surviving the trumpeteers actually becomes an ever greater punishment. These angels literally split the world apart with a quake after implementing all sorts of legendary suffering. Jeez Louise, I thought these guys were supposed to protect and watch over humanity, not absolutely annihilate everyone.
In at 3, Belphegor. Belphegor, along with a few other numbers on our list, is a demon and one of the 7 princes of hell. His powers are of seduction, seducing people with money and inventions, promising endless riches. His role as a demon is to turn humans against each other through means of wealth. He uses our gluttonous desires to drive man to evil, promising fortune in the end. Other reports label him as Hell's ambassador to France. Odd title, and his adversary is Saint Mary Magdalene, one of the patron saints of France. His origin is that of a fallen angel and a false god that Moses handed down the death penalty for worshipping. He was dispatched to earth by Satan to deceive mortals, often taking the form of a beautiful woman, typically naked. Although sometimes he can appear as a demon, sporting leathery flesh, horns, sharp teeth, and a gaping mouth, ready to destroy mankind. In at 2, Bilzeub. Identified in the New Testament, Bilzeub is the prince of demons. He holds a high position in Hell's hierarchy and supposedly led a successful revolt against the devil. He is the chief lieutenant of Lucifer, the emperor of Hell, and is often placed among the 3 most prominent fallen angels, the others being Lucifer and Leviathan. He is capable of flying, which is the worst, and is known as the Lord of the Fires or the Lord of the Flies. Beelzebub is rumored to be responsible for many demonic possessions throughout history. One of the most famous is the possession of Anneliese Michel, a teenager who was diagnosed with epilepsy before a number of exorcisms were later performed, eventually resulting in her death. Bilzeub was also believed to be sowing his influence in Salem, Massachusetts. His name was repeatedly mentioned during the Salem witch trials. And finally, in at number 1, Lucifer. In classical mythology, Lucifer, meaning the bringer of light, was the name of the planet Venus, though in many cases Lucifer was represented as a winged child pouring light from a jar, or even a man bearing a torch. Now in Christianity, as we know, Lucifer became so obsessed with his own beauty and intelligence that he began to desire the honor and power that belonged to God, corrupting him and forcing God to cast him down to the underworld. It is also noted that once he was cast down, he changed his name from Lucifer to Satan, meaning adversary, and following the second coming of Christ, he was bound to the pits of hell during the 1,000-year millennial kingdom over which Christ ruled. All in all, Satan is widely known as the devil himself, an evil entity that seduces humans into sin. He possesses power over the fallen world and a host of various demons, induced Judaism, Satan is regarded as an agent subservient to God. There is no answer to whether Lucifer and Satan are two separate entities or whether Lucifer's fall from heaven created Satan, but an examination of several passages reveals that he can be none other than Satan, the devil himself. In at 5, Mammon. In the New Testament of the Bible, Mammon is a fallen angel. His name is thought to mean money, material wealth, or any entity that promises wealth. He's essentially the embodiment of the cardinal sin, greed. Sounds like a swell guy. He is associated with the greedy pursuit of gain. I quote, "You cannot serve both God and Mammon." He is often personified as a deity and is included amongst the 7 princes of hell. According to some readings, he is the son of Lucifer himself, conceived before his father fell from heaven and born after he was sent to hell. Before his fall from grace, I quote, "He was more interested in heaven's golden pavement than its celestial leader. From the underworld he comes up with schemes to manipulate humans into adding to his fortune. He is supposedly so powerful that innocent humans can be corrupted by him, adding to his treasures and fortunes instead of virtues that they can carry up to heaven." In at 4, Abaddon. Abaddon is known as the angel of the bottomless pit, one of the many fallen angels we have on our list. In the New Testament book of Revelation, they are described as the king of an army of locusts, as well as Destroyer, the angel of the abyss. As the king of locusts, he has an army resembling horses with crowned human faces, women's hair, lion's teeth, wings, iron breastplates, and a scorpion stinger. Nasty. Many believe Abaddon to be the Antichrist, but others identify him as the angel as Satan. According to Revelation 9:1-11, after the 5th angel sounds his trumpet, a star falls from heaven and opens the bottomless pit. As the storm of smoke arises, and from the smoke a plague of locusts emerge to torment, but not kill, men who lack the seal of God on their foreheads for 5 months. His origin gets a little hazy, making him appear to be the servant of God, yet also a servant of Satan. Guess it's up to you what you believe.
Moving on to our 3rd place, we have the Conjuring Mirror. Unlike the last artifact on our list, this has nothing to do with the Hollywood franchise. Originally belonging to a 45-year-old New Jersey man named Oliver Birnbaum, it was used to practice a medieval ritual known as speculum, or mirror magic. He performed a lengthy incantation ritual known as a conjuring formula, inviting the spirit world to assist him in manipulating the future. In the beginning, Oliver saw very little in the mirror, other than the movement of blurred forms or quick little incidents that meant nothing to him. But the more he concentrated his attention into the mirror, the more control Oliver gained, and ergo, the more he could see. After performing this ritual obsessively for many months, he got to the point where all he had to do was state what he wanted to see and the desired image would appear, eventually being able to tune into the future whenever he wanted. He gained the ability to project people he didn't like into the mirror, singling them out for punishment or revenge. The unknowing victim would be shown in a future situation, and Oliver would will misfortune to that person, being able to see his justice occur in the mirror just the way he planned it. And while this sounds like a fun projection of one's imagination, these malicious acts would actually be carried out by inhuman spirits. In order to make a victim fall down the stairs, a spirit would either momentarily disorient the person, apport some grease on a step, or go so far as to give the victim a psychokinetic push. Eventually, Oliver neglected the part of the ritual where he had to give homage to Satan, and as a result, the evil he proposed for others began to occur to him, along with the spirits that he turned loose on his enemies now infesting his own home instead. After about a week of torture, this man was so terrified that he called a prominent Catholic official and begged him to send a demonologist to his house. When the Warrens arrived at the address, they met a man frightened out of his wits, and rightfully so. Doors were opening and closing by themselves. Every minute something would crash and break or bounce off a wall and smash. Ed was able to reverse the ritual originally enacted by Oliver and bless the house, stopping the disturbance. As the Warrens were about to depart, Oliver insisted that they take the mirror with them, and the 5-foot-tall antique now lives in their museum. In 2nd place, we have the black lace veil. Now, while I obviously love the idea of a cute gothy aesthetic, this is anything but. After one of their public lectures, Ed was conversing with a couple that had been in the audience, where the boy introduced himself as Alan and explained that he'd brought his girlfriend Lonnie to the lecture because he suspected that she'd been overtaken by some occult influence. He explained that when his girlfriend became angry, her features would change into something resembling a wolf, and then the voice of a different person would speak from inside of her. When Lorraine walked over to join the group, Lonnie experienced an episode of instantaneous possession and lurched out in an attempt to attack Lorraine. This incident terrified everyone in the vicinity, with the Warrens ending the audience chat session immediately, before Ed escorted the couple to an offstage room while Lorraine stayed outside. In the backstage room, the girl was fully under possession, breathing heavily, and her facial features had transformed into the wolf-like appearance the boy had talked about. After about 10 minutes, the possession passed, and Lonnie was lucid enough to explain dealing with memory loss, along with losing hours and days of her life over the last 3 months, a symptom that is common in possession. She went on to share her background. She was a girl wealthy enough to buy whatever she wanted, but money can't always buy love. Originally, her now boyfriend Alan had refused all of her advances and bribery attempts at becoming hers, and she had resorted to visiting a store prominent in selling tools to help with witchcraft, purchasing there a book on the black arts, and later that night performing a ritual for acquiring lovers. This ritual involved, you guessed it, the black lace veil, on top of which she placed a crown of goat horns before renouncing God and her baptism, along with swearing allegiance to Satan, finishing the ritual by washing down the vow with a cup of animal life force. You know, simple stuff. About a month after Lonnie performed the ritual, Alan began paying her the attention she craved, making her entitled world perfect. What she hadn't counted on, however, was that she was in debt to the demonic, having given them permission to enter her life. Ed knew immediately that Lonnie would have to undergo an exorcism as soon as possible and made contact with a priest the next morning, who was able to come and assist with the procedure. Upon arrival, the priest insisted on testing the spirit. He instructed Lonnie to close her eyes and slowly count to 20, while his assistant stood behind her and placed a cross 6 inches behind her head. The entity possessing the girl suddenly went wild, screaming, "Take it away! It burns! Take it away!" During the exorcism, it kept screaming, she's mine, her soul is mine," in reference to Lonnie. It was eventually separated from Lonnie, but just before it departed, the thing vowed it would return to another. The Warrens brought the black lace veil, goat horns, cup, and the Conjuring book home with them so she would be safe from repossession. But the tale of the veil doesn't end here. Ed received a phone call one day from a man named John Rand, who wanted him to meet his daughter Charlene, who he explained possessed a natural knowledge of what he took to be witchcraft. When she stared at people, even when they weren't aware of it, she'd fill their mind with inhuman terror. John called Ed specifically because Charlene was manifesting different personalities, some male, some female, and some that couldn't even be called human, but all making extremely threatening statements to John and his wife. Upon bringing Charlene to various doctors and clergymen, they recommended John be put in contact with Ed, and Ed agreed to have the girl and her father visit his home the next weekend. When Ed attempted to shake Charlene's hand upon meeting her, she backed away and stared distressfully at him, keeping track of every move he made. His attempts to question her resulted in no-end answers, and her eyes began to wander about the room in boredom. When they landed on the black veil, Charlene jumped up, grabbed the veil, and clutched it to her chest. Her features immediately began to transform into those of a wild, sneering creature distinct from this otherwise attractive girl. Ed drew 2 vials of water to himself, one unblessed, the other blessed by an exorcist, and moved away from what was no longer Charlene, but an inhuman spirit, a lesser devil of hell. Horrid moaning and various animal sounds came from the girl as Ed blessed her, banishing the demon away for now a second time. These items have since been locked away in the museum. And finally, in first place, we have the Ouija board recovered from the Donovan household. 15-year-old Patty Donovan came across the Ouija board and decided to use it to find a friend. From the first yes in response to her queries, Patty was hooked. She spent months falling in love with a spirit she believed to be in love with her, telling it intimacies about her everyday life. After about a year of telling all of her secrets to the board, Patty had become emotionally dependent on the spirit, asking it one night to reveal her future. During the very long session, it laid out a scenario of Patty's life for the next 6 years, providing specific details, right down to the date of the birth of her first child and the fact that she would have a total of 3 children by 1978. All information that would eventually prove true. Being as dependent as she was, on the evening of March 2nd, Patty now pleaded for the spirit to manifest. The next morning, Theodore Donovan found the spark plug wires pulled out of his car, the rubber hoses unfastened, and the fan belt cut out when he was attempting to start his vehicle. Not much later, Patty attempted to start her car. It was discovered later that the internal engine had been completely disassembled. That week, other incidents of apparent vandalism occurred around the Donovan house. Foundation shrubs were yanked out of the ground, roots and all. On the roof, a 6-foot cast iron pipe, which held electrical wires, was found bent at a 90-degree angle. On Friday, March 8th, Ted marked 1 flat on the kitchen calendar. No sooner did Patty get her car back from the shop than one of her other tires lost air. The next day, Saturday, her father made the same entry on the calendar, although this time it seems the tire had been cut with a knife. In the meantime, Patty could no longer raise her invisible boyfriend on the Ouija board. Night after night, she tried to communicate, but the planchette would simply slide over to goodbye. She had no idea that her ethereal beau had actually manifested in the form of a supernatural vandal. By the second week of March, material damage to the house and cars had become so troublesome that Ted had complained to the police. When they arrived, he pointed out the destruction done to the garden plants and shrubs, the exterior of the house, and the apparent intrusion into a locked garage to puncture the tires and tear engines apart. Before leaving, the policeman assured Ted that they'd keep an eye on the property during night patrols. Later that second week, after work, Ted and his wife Ellen were sitting in the kitchen with their son Brian when all 3 heard something smash against a wall somewhere inside the house. Cautiously moving to investigate, they found a gaping 18-inch hole in the plasterboard wall in Brian's room. Just as upsetting was the fact that the jagged edges of the plasterboard were pointing inwards, with the blow coming from inside the walls. Listening in the dark that night, Ted heard the sound of a board being pried loose, but after checking the entire house thoroughly, found no loose boards. The house was further plagued by loud noises every night that only escalated in frequency and volume, along with further unexplainable damage to the walls. On April 1st, furniture began to levitate, with a 250-pound dresser flinging its contents while flying erratically. Rocks had also begun to rain from the sky, pelting only the Donovan house, which the police bore witness to. Ted eventually broke down at work and explained the horror of his to his supervisor, who urged him to reach out to the Warrens. Ted instead tried moving his family into a hotel at first, and the spirits followed the family there, destroying the room and making so much noise that the family was thrown out of the hotel and forced to return home. Finally contacting Ed and Lorraine, they arrived in Maine as quickly as they were able to, finding the home in complete disarray. Lorraine said nothing, although at the time she sensed in the home the presence of entities so numerous and threatening that she had to fight with herself to keep from going back outside. After a lengthy tour of the house, Ed and Lorraine conducted an interview with the entire family, where Patty's history with the Ouija board was revealed. The Warrens then contacted the Catholic Church to begin the process for an exorcism to be granted, which sadly took a month. The family experienced many more unexplainable horrors during that time.